learning, and we've been directed to the school board trustee with, again, no answer. So, rather than keep complaining about people not answering me, I wanted to be the person that people come to for those answers. So put my hat in the ring and, now let's go.
Yes, and those unanswered questions definitely would have led you to where you are today in running, right? Mm-hmm. So what are some of the changes that you want to see implemented when you take office?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. So first, I want to look at transparency. The board we've got some really good and strong representatives on the board, but they're only as good as their colleagues, right? So, shout out to a couple, and I'm going to shout out Nikki Lundquist out in Durham, who is, really trailblazing and a champion of the work. But I can't say the same for all of the other trustees. Again, won't mention too many names. So, one of the things that we want to see is transparency. Like, how, as a school board, can we be more transparent? DDSB has been in the news like almost consistently over the last couple of years. And one of the things we've seen is around how certain decisions are made. So there's some big decisions that have come up and they've gone in camera. Then all of a sudden come out of camera and those decisions are made. We have no idea who said what, but all we know is that a decision was made with little information around who made them. So I want to look at transparency. How as a board can we be more transparent, get more information out to our community, to our parents, and how can they influence some of the decisions? I think accessibility, again, my story is I haven't been able to get hold of trustees, right? And they are elected officials. They're put into position by the community. So if there is any position that's representative of the board that needs to be accessible, it's the school board trustee. So over the course, again, of my children's career, the fact that I couldn't get hold of 3 school board trustees, 2 in one district, 1 in the other, is absolutely ridiculous. So it's how do you access us? And again, part of what I've heard is that, you don't want to open that kind of worms because you're going to get people continuously asking questions. That's okay. There's ways and mechanisms that we can support that. There are quite a few of us there, and there's administrative support, and there is technology that will assist us to be more accessible. So really want to look at the mechanisms and the tools that can allow us to be more accessible to the community. Also, other thing about that is most of the board meetings are held in one part of Durham. So, Durham may not seem big, but I'm in Pickering. The head office is in Whitby. So it's a little bit of a trek for me, and I drive. There's offices that don't have access to vehicles. So how about we start looking at moving some of the board meetings around the region so they're more accessible and people can hear and see, 1, who are the other representatives, and 2, what's happening. The other thing, I want to be a lot more intentional. We're bringing in Durham, there's a lot of developments going up. And I think that's the main argument around, the mayoral candidates and the councillors and regional councillors. Why are we letting so many developments grow? Why are we allowing these developments to come here? Part of the challenge there is there are children who are going into those developments. So when we're looking at these developments, is there intentionality around how that's going to impact the school system? How many children are going to one school? When will that school be built? Now are we dealing with overcrowding and overflow in other schools where, there's a class size of 28 and all of a sudden we've got 30 plus students in there. So how can we be more intentional about what we do? And finally, I really want to bring a thoughtfulness to what we do. So we're talking about anti-Black racism strategies. We're talking about working on Indigenous discrimination. But what does that really mean? Who is at the table? Who can inform this process? And how can we be thoughtful and mindful about the rollout of such projects and programs?
Yeah, and these are all definitely questions that we may have had in our own personal districts, where we're seeing our city growing at a large rate. So these are definitely questions that we need answers to. Have you run into any obstacles as you are running for office?
Oh yeah. So we've got other people, so I'll try and keep it short. But I think one of the more interesting conversations is being asked the question, if I get in, how can I ensure that my focus won't solely be the Black community, right? So, and part of that is we do have non-Black representatives. And I'm not too sure how many of them were asked that question, how many we were asking, how do we ensure that, you know, the priorities, the priorities will be spread to other races, cultures, religions. So, you know, trying to manage some of those questions and some of the, you know, holding my own frustration around why I'm being asked that question has been a challenge. Again, I understand, like, we are coming into a time where the representatives are going to have a lot of big decisions to be made, and nobody wants their children or their family to be left behind. But again, it's, you know, as a Black candidate, there's a way that we've had to go about it that some don't have. Sorry, you have to give me a second. So come, you gotta say hi to everyone real quick. Pop your head in.
Hello, how are you?
All right. Sorry about that. So I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so it's running this campaign, knowing the challenges, knowing that there has been anti-Black racism, you know, incidents of anti-Black racism, and knowing that needs to be a focus, but also knowing that there's special needs challenges that we need to overcome. There's mental health challenges that we have to overcome. There is overcrowded in schools that we have to overcome. That impacts all races. And that's part of our platforms if you listen to us speak. So the fact that it's honing in on just the anti-Black racism component of our literature is sometimes challenging, but I'm also not going to run away from it. It's something that we need to address, and we will address it head on, as well as some of the other priorities. And again, I'm lucky enough to, you know, if all goes well, there are some real powerful people with some great minds that are going to go in, and we're going to work cohesively and collaboratively. So trying to paint the entire picture, you know, 2 representatives for Pickering, 3 in Whitby, 2, I believe, in Ajax. It's a collaborative effort. So even trying to paint the big picture has been a challenge. And I think last thing somebody mentioned, the fact that the trustee kind of position kind of gets swept under the table, right? So it's trying to show how important that role is in terms of the future of our children and our families.
Because the children are the future, so that definitely is important. So as a Black individual running for office, with that concern there that they seem to have, how does that impact us as voters, as the Black community? Do you see a lot of Black voters coming out, like a lot of participation in the Black community?
You know, if you'd asked me this question maybe about 2 weeks ago, I might have had a different answer. But I think now, through this movement, I am extremely proud to be part of, you know, friends and getting to know some of the representatives. And there's a movement where now we're bringing out the votes. People are getting interested, and I'm getting emails, all right, how do I vote? So much so that I've changed some of the literature to ensure that information is out there, because people want this information. You know, there's all kinds of, I guess, tricks of the trade when it comes to trying to get people out. And one of those is actually looking at the numbers of the last election and trying to see who votes. And I've been told by past candidates, focus on those areas. Don't worry about the, you know, those who are only voting in the hundreds. Focus on the areas that are voting in the thousands. And if you look, that's where the debates are happening, and those are the voices that are being heard. So it's really trying to show the community. And I've actually actively, when I go out and I'm canvassing, I'm working with the numbers and I'm saying, look, this is an area that you may not see too many candidates, because in years past, this area hasn't voted, you know, in numbers. And there's concerns. Speeding is concerned. Urban sprawl is a concern. You know, the teachers and the curriculum and the pedagogy is a concern. But if you're not voting by the numbers, you're not really going to get too many candidates who will come out and hear. So it's really now showing that, being a lot more transparent in terms of this process, and trying to encourage people that, yes, the voice does matter, because the numbers are reflective.
Yeah, and that's important, letting them know that their voices need to be heard and that they can be heard. I think that's one of the biggest struggles why people don't go out there to vote. So what's a word of advice you would have for any parents or guardians that are looking to support what you have going on right now?
Keeping it quick. Read the literature. It's out there. Our websites are available. Go in there, read the platform. You know the challenges. We know the challenges that our children face. Read the platforms. Vote for who you feel resonates with you, and then hold us to account. You know, we've got our card. Hold on to it. In a year, turn it around. Have I done exactly what I said I was going to do? And if not, hold me to it. Attend a meeting, read it back out, and ensure that I'm doing what I said I was going to do. And do that for all candidates: mayors, regional councillors, school board trustees.
Fabulous. All right, Stephen, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Please let everybody know how they can get in contact with you. Oh, he's muted.
Sorry, I forgot that question was coming. All the information is on the website, www.stephenlinton, and that's Stephen spelled with a PH, .ca, and that will take you to all the social media handles. It will also provide information around the voting process because it has changed quite a bit for those who are in Pickering.
All right, all right. Thank you so much again for joining. I appreciate you. All right. Okay, we are going to move on to Avril Rowe. Avril has lived in Ajax with her family for the past 6 years. As a current DDSB parent, she has the privilege and intimate understanding of how policy impacts our students here and now. She recognizes the different voices that play a part in setting the conditions that will provide a high quality education for every student to reach their full potential in school and in life. Avril graduated from the University of Toronto with an honors BA in political science and political science specialist. She is currently an HR advisor in the public sector working on an equitable and inclusive staffing policies. Let's welcome Avril to the table. Hi, Avril.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. So I would just like to ask you a couple of questions. First off, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate you. Talk to us about what led you to run for office this year.
First things is I have 2 kids in the system, and over the past year, just the policies that came to light and certain trustees' views on it, it made me realize that some trustees did not have the children's best views at heart. And I was like, okay, someone needs to run to really represent all children. And I realized that I had to be that person because I wasn't seeing anyone at the time who was running in Ajax. And I graduated from TDSB. So I went to Scarborough Board of Education, for those who know, before Toronto got amalgamated. And then I'm a product of TDSB. And there are certain things that are happening within our schools that were happening when I was back in school, and I was like, no, someone needs to take a stand for it. And I have a lot of friends who their scholastic journeys were stunted because they didn't have anyone advocating for them. So I was like, I know my kids are good, but I was raised for you look out for others. And I was like, I want to be a voice. I want to be an advocate for those children who have parents who either don't know how to advocate for them, can't advocate for them, or unfortunately they don't have caregivers in their corner. So I'm having a call come in on my laptop, so I just need to
So sorry about that. For some reason, I got logged out there. My apologies. Thank you so much. Sorry about that, guys. I was just asking what led you to run for this position. If you could just respond to that, please, again for me. Okay, sorry, just one moment. Having a little bit of issues today, guys. One sec.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know that you got logged out. So in order to
I
keep
can't hear you though.
Oh, you can't? No one can hear me? Oh, they all can hear me.
It says that can everybody else hear Avril? I hear. Sorry, just one moment.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, I've just asked you to unmute again. Can you?
I'm unmuted.
I'm not sure what the issue is. I'm not sure why this is not working for me. Oh my goodness. For some reason, I can't hear her. I'm not sure why I can't. What's wrong with my system all of a sudden? Okay, I think this should work now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I could hear you now.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. I'm like today, I don't know. My computer wasn't working. I'm supposed to be honest with you, I'm supposed to have a moderator to help me. My moderator is not here with me today, so I'm trying to juggle. So if you guys would please just be patient with me, and I am doing the best that I can. Okay, thank you so much. So yes, we were talking about what led you to run for this position. You had mentioned that you have children in the board going to school. What are some of the concerns that you've seen?
So within DDSB, they released a new human rights and anti-racism policy, and there was a trustee who wanted like the words white supremacy removed from it and was speaking about how the policy is reverse racism. And I was like, you're not being a trustee of a school board that my children are going to, that my Black children are going to. And there is a lot that happens within school boards that a lot of parents and families aren't aware of. So I do want to increase that engagement and that transparency. But also a big thing is there needs to be representation with our board, because Ajax especially, it's very diverse. It has one of the highest Black populations within Canada. And if you look at the DDSB, the current board of trustees, it doesn't reflect that. And there are trustees that will represent the needs of all children, but a lot of them aren't doing that.
Mm-hmm. So you had mentioned there were some different concerns. What were some of the concerns?
Well, was with the policy, with the reverse racism, the removal of white supremacy. There isn't data being collected, but there is enough data, race-based data collected. But it is known that Black students are they are suspended and expelled at a higher rate than other races within DDSB. Sorry, is anyone else getting an echo?
I do have another. You're getting an echo?
Yeah, and even just this past week, I heard it about in a high school in Whitby, the children staged a sit-in because they were having acts of racism committed against them, and they were getting sent home and suspended based on their reactions. But the kids who are committing these racist acts against them, nothing is happening. And that's happening within our school board. And like, they need someone representing them. They need someone advocating for them.
And so this is happening in Ajax?
This is happening within DDSB. The high school where the sit-in occurred is in Whitby. But as a trustee, not only do I be sitting on it representing the constituents of Ajax, but it's the trustees as a whole, the board trustees as a whole who make decisions.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so talk to us about voting. Why is it so important?
It's our civic right. It's our civic duty. I did go to school specializing in political science, so this is up my alley. And there are some of my friends who, I know a lot of people who have voter apathy, and it drives me nuts because they're like, this isn't the thing for me. But I was like, do you realize that the issues that you are complaining about are things that are resolved within the political system? I'm like, the higher gas prices, the rates, the bank rate increases, development, education, like healthcare, the fact that, there were ICUs that were closed because hospitals didn't have enough staff. And if you go to an emergency room now, you could be, who knows how long you'll wait. Like, honestly, myself, unless I have a limb hanging off, I'm just going to take a chance and stay home. But I'm like, these are all things that are affected by you voting.
Definitely very important information for us to get out there and vote. So as you've been canvassing, what do you see? Do you see a lot of interest in people getting out there to vote?
No, it depends on the homes that I go to. Honestly, it's if people open the doors, because I think a lot of people either think, okay, this person's here to sell something, they're here to convert me to their religion, or they're trying to commit some type of criminal activity. So it's actually getting the people to like, no, I'm here. I'm here because I'm campaigning. There are some people, it's honestly, when it comes to the Black community and at the door, it's either, okay, I'll see, or like, I don't vote. And then you'll have other people who are like, absolutely, we need someone in there who's fighting for our kids. But I get a lot of times, even though I'll explain my platform and everything, there's okay, well, I have to check out the other candidates and see what they're about. So people may be politically active, but they may not be fully excited to see a young Black woman at the door.
Okay. And then so I'm just thinking right now out loud, but talk to us about, as parents or guardians, the importance of us being present in our children's schools.
It's 100% important. There was a call, like a town hall that I was on a couple years ago, and it was with Kathy McDonald, who is a trustee within Peel. She's a Black woman, she's Jamaican, and she had said something that really stood out. And it was that, the administration and these school boards, they take our absence as permission to mistreat our children. If you're present, if you're showing up, that stuff, it may happen, but it decreases significantly. I grew up in a home where my dad was at everything. Like everyone knew Mr. Sutton, and it also helped me because I knew that if I acted up in school, they knew my dad, they knew his name on a first name basis, and he would be called. But my siblings and I, we also knew, because I have 5 siblings, that if a teacher or administrator ever mistreated us, go to my dad, no questions asked. He was coming to advocate for his children. And there are occasions where, because you'd always ask us about like, well, how was school? And there's certain things as a kid that, you know something wasn't right in what happened, but you don't know how to address it, or you didn't even think that it was like that bad. And then I would find out later on, because a teacher and administrator would come to apologize to me, that what happened was like completely out of line. Like in middle school, when my principal, myself and my friend who's also Black, we were doing like lunchtime office duty. And she's like, oh, you girls are here. That means I have to lock up my stuff so you don't steal it. And I just like told my dad in passing, because I didn't feel good about it, but I was like, whatever. And I found out the next day that my dad called the principal, was like, don't ever talk to my daughter like that again. Like, you are perpetuating stereotypes about Black people stealing. So because the administration and teachers knew, they knew if I acted up that he would be there, but they also knew if they acted up, he would be there. And that is what I've carried on with my children. And thankfully, I've had really positive relationships with the administrators and educators, because regardless if there is mistreatment or not, I think even if your kid, your kid's an angel and no one's bothering them, it is very important and critical to be involved in your children's education. It's not just on the teachers, it's a collaborative relationship.
Definitely super important for parents and guardians to know how important their role is in the schools. So talk to us about where in your community somebody can get out to vote.
So I'm in Ajax, which is different from a lot of municipalities where it's only online and telephone voting this year. So you can do online and telephone voting from October 17th to October 24th. For people who require assistance, there are 3 voter assistance centers, but you're still not voting through a ballot. You're still doing online there. And the polling stations are at, sorry, I don't have them memorized, but I have it on my phone. Ajax Community Center, so that's in South Ajax. Audley Recreation Center, which is in North Ajax, and McLean Community Center, which is Central Ajax. So there's 3 wards in Ajax, and the voter assistance centers are located in each ward.
All right, perfect. So thank you so much, Avril. Please let everybody know where they can get in contact with you if they need to reach out.
So you can go to my website, which is rowefortrustee.ca, ROWE, trustee for the actual word for, FOR. And my social media handles are all the same, Row for Trustee. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, but I'm the most active on Instagram.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for joining. All right, so we are going to move on, and we're moving on to Mr. Christopher Mamalidi. All right, so for the last 4 years, Christopher has served as our Toronto District School Board trustee. His dedication to public service and community was noticed by his colleagues right away, electing Christopher to be the first trustee for Humber River Black Creek, to sit as vice chair of the board. Prior to being elected, Christopher spent 12 years operating and managing a successful local business. While working, Christopher also completed his business management degree and volunteered as the PAC chair for Seneca Business. As a husband and proud new father and brother to 4 siblings, Christopher is a family-driven person with a passion to help. with a passion to help others. This commitment to helping others is the reason why he is running to be the next counselor for the Humber River Black Creek. Okay, so we are welcoming Christopher to the table.
Thank you very much, Miss Ellie.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And very quickly before we get moving, congratulations to everybody who's put their name forward to run for public office.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here as well, Chris. So talk to us about your run last year as trustee. How did it go? Oh.
Oh, I'm off mute now.
So how was, because you're running for city councilor at this point, right? But you have already been elected as a school board trustee. So talk to us about being a school board trustee. How was that?
For me personally, it was the most honored position probably honored position I'll ever hold. The personal growth that happens in that role is incredible. It's a time in my life I'll never forget. I'll cherish it forever. I think one thing that I tell everybody, what you think you're walking into is very different when you get there. The challenges that exist and the difficulty working through a board as opposed to individual counselors, if you're looking at a council position, is a very different world. And it's important that you're working through colleagues, that you're working through team to get the progress that you're looking for. But from my perspective, I loved every minute of it. And I wish everybody the best of luck in running for that position. I think trustee is a great starting point for anybody looking to run for public office. I think there's incredible lessons to be learned, just familiarity with public systems, and just the depth of public education, the importance of our provincial government, and the decisions made at the ministry on the impacts and decisions of a board. Just a lot of learning. Amazing time.
Awesome. So talk to us about the importance and the significance of a school trustee.
Oh, it's critical. I'm not sure there's a more important role than public education to our society. I think to see the growth that I know everybody on this panel right now would like to see, it starts with public education. And being a public school trustee is paramount to ensuring that the systems are growing and progressing as they should be. Systemic oppression, systemic racism have played a dominant role in a lot of our public systems. So it is beyond critical that we're active, that we're engaging the public, that we're listening. It is a difficult job. It's a part-time job. So a lot of people have to carry a full-time position, and that can create a challenge. But at the end of the day, you are the voice of public education, and you have to be there to advocate for not just your youth, but the youth of the entire community, the youth of your city or your municipality that you're representing. If you're not there to do that, if you're not going to engage the public, you're going to see the voter apathy that we see now. That comes from a distrust in leadership. And that's what happens when leadership are not engaging the public and they're not taking the time necessary to build the trust. And through trust is where you start to see progress take shape. Nothing happens because the trustee says so. It happens because the community said so. And you tend to be the voice for the community, but at the end of the day, you have to represent that community based on the issues that they see, that they feel, their life experience. So I think it's a critical role in our public systems and the future of our societies. So you in that position are critical people to delivering what the community is expecting of us.
For sure, there's definitely various roles to be played as a trustee, but especially mentioning systematic racism. What are some of the measures that were taken to combat that?
Well, I think at the TDSB, and this is no disrespect to any board, I think that there's a lot of progress that's been moving at the Toronto District School Board. I think data collection is critical. Making evidence-based decisions as opposed to allowing conversations to run around evidence. I think that is going to be critical to all boards. It's something that I know the TDSB has a plethora of incredible data, but it's not being shared. It's not being utilized by every level of government. It's not being utilized by other boards. And that to me is a big mistake. I think that if we started to utilize this data and show it, some of the issues that we were talking about earlier about our Black youth in schools, our Indigenous youth, it's very clear that there's been systemic racism and systemic oppression. And we have to use this type of information, this type of data, to be able to progress and push through those very real barriers. And anybody who thinks that they're not there has got blinders on, because it has been there and it's been there from the onset. So these are the things we have to take on at the TDSB. We do our best, of course, but at the end of the day, we have a lot more to do. There was a statistic that came out around the provincial measure on mathematics for grade 9, and our Black youth, Black boys specifically, only 19% were achieving the expected mathematic achievement numbers. That means, what is that, 81% are not achieving by grade 9. And, quite frankly, between Black and Indigenous groups, if that was any other background, this would be a much bigger story. So that shows you the level of systemic racism and oppression that exists, and we have to challenge it with data, with educated decision-making, so that we can turn away misinformation and stuff that continues the status quo.
For sure. And we see that, you're, of course, from my area. So I'm always happy to be behind anything that you have going on, because you definitely are always out there in the community, showing advocacy to what we have going on and just being present to any needs and concerns that we have. So that's great. And at this point now, you're running for city councillor. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I'm running for city council this time around, and largely because, Miss Ellie, I've been on the show with you before, and early on in our conversations, I had said that I wanted to be a trustee for 2 terms. And that was always the goal that I had set out. But what I recognized through the pandemic, especially through the pandemic, was the need for change in leadership. We need young people in politics. We need people who have lived experience from the communities they're representing. And we need people who are going to engage and be there consistently. And, these are one of the gaps that I've seen in my local community, where, people are working in silos, and that's not helpful. We have to be working in collaboration with all stakeholders. You don't always have to agree. That's not the purpose, but the purpose is to be working in a collaborative way that benefits the community and the growth of that seat or that body that you're running for. So from my perspective, I think there's tremendous opportunity for growth. I think there's opportunity to set an example of what leadership looks like. And that's my hope. At the end of the day, I'm growing myself, as everybody I'm sure on the panel would state as well. And we're going to learn, and we're going to move, and we're going to grow. But at the end of the day, we're going to be responsive to our public. And that's really, really important to combat that voter apathy that was mentioned a few times already.
And so, of course, I do have to ask you then, what leadership means to you?
Leadership to me is all about growing the team around you. I believe in modern leadership. I don't believe in hierarchical leadership. I think it's important that I'm setting an example, or we, all those that are on the panel today, are setting an example for our youth. Setting our example for the community of what to expect, what leadership actually looks like, the responsiveness I mentioned earlier. But integrity is critical. What people say about you when you're not in the room, that is your character. That is what leaves when you're no longer in politics, or you're not in that position anymore. That's what's going to stay. And you setting that example for young people, that's going to make them want to take that seat or take that effort or drive to that position that maybe in the past traditionally hasn't happened. So I think leadership is very much about how you grow the future leadership, how you set an example to follow, and of course be built upon.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate you for joining us today. Tell everybody where they can find you.
No, always my pleasure. And you can find us at Mambaliti for Ward 7, And on that website, you will find all of the links as others have suggested, as well as some videos, some of the campaign points that we're looking to improve on. And we're always here to answer any questions any time of day. It's a 24/7 job, and we take pride in that.
All right. Thanks so much, Chris.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All righty. All right, guys. So that was Chris from Humber River Black Creek. And next we're going to be moving on to speak with David Bosfield. Okay, so David Bosfield is a founder of the Black Education Fund, a fundraising organization dedicating to providing Black students with scholarship money for post-secondary studies. He is a field services support worker at Bell Canada, who has previously worked as a trainer during a career that spans more than 25 years. David was the first elected president that served in a variety of roles within CEP Local 6006, now known as Unifor. He also spent 3 years as an organizing director at Communication Workers of America, advocating for workers in the media and communication sectors. David is a communication worker and advocate who has dedicated countless hours fighting against anti-Black racism, particularly in education, policing, and municipal government in Brampton. As a coach and board member with the Peel Region Football, David connects directly with young people and supports their growth in the community and athletics. He also works directly with families and individuals who have been impacted by police violence. David is an active volunteer in his community and serves as president of his condo board association. He recently joined Parents of Black Children as a board member. Most important to David are his 2 children, Tristan and Gabriella, who are students within the PDSB and therefore is very invested in seeing their growth. So we welcome Mr. David Bosfield.
Hi, it's Bosfield. Thanks
Bosfield.
for getting
Sorry.
me finally. It's good
My
to be.
apologies.
No worries.
So how are you doing?
I'm good. Busy. It's a bit of a crazy time for us all.
Definitely a bit of a crazy time.
Yeah.
Of course, today is the beginning. And first of all, I'd like to apologize because you were having a bit of trouble getting into the chat. Today was just a little bit of a mess for me. So I do apologize for that.
No need to apologize. I'm here now.
Thank you for your patience. So talk to us about what led you to run for office this year.
Well, so for those that don't know, I'm out here in Peel, and I feel like Peel is ground zero for the problems with public education in Ontario, particularly for our Black students. So in 2020, when the board was stripped of their powers by the Minister of Education and appointed a supervisor, at the time I was working with a group called Advocacy Peel. And we talked amongst ourselves. It was a small group led by Kala Iliamade, who subsequently passed away, unfortunately, because he was a fierce warrior for the changes that we need in education out here in Peel. And we talked a lot amongst ourselves about how to make the changes last. And we recognized that those, the ministry review and investigation that led to the trustees having their power stripped and the subsequent issuing of 21 directives by the minister would mean nothing if those trustees came back into power, because really 10 out of the 12 trustees were completely complicit in the anti-Black racism that was happening, the denial and the refusal to do anything about it. And so without, I heard someone mention Kathy, and by the way, even though I wasn't on the call, Sophia Jackson was kind enough to hold her phone on speaker, so I did get to hear some of the comments from the previous speakers, so that was really helpful. But I knew that Kathy was one of the people that did a lot, and Noka. So there was 2 trustees that really pushed from the inside, but that's 2 out of 10, right? And on a board like that, you need 7 votes to get anything done. And this board was absolutely unwilling to acknowledge the problem, nor take steps to deal with it. So I think that we would arrive back in the same place if folks from the community who got involved and were active in pushing out, the current board, if we then just sat back and didn't run, we would be leaving it open for a return to, the crazy days of denial and anti-Black racism, that still exist, right? But the goal here, I think, is to take some power on this board and be in a position to make decisions that are better for Black students and Black children and Black families.
And lasting changes are important because a lot of times I think that's one of the concerns with voters is that they go out and they may not see those lasting changes, right? So what is one way or some ways maybe that you have of implementing lasting changes?
Well, so I take a really hyper local approach to things. And, so when you read my bio, it said I'm the president of the con.
Sorry, I think are you muted?
I don't think so. Nobody can hear me?
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay. I can't hear you now, but you can hear me. So I take issues as they come across my desk, so to speak. And in my very close neighborhood, we had a racist board director. And the thing is, when we talk about democracy, when we talk about voting, a lot of people in all identity groups think that voting is the be all and end all of their democratic responsibilities. But there's democracy embedded in all of these structures, in corporate boards, in condo boards, in local unions and national unions, in city councils, municipal offices, school boards. And those institutions have platforms where people can speak and delegate and do deputations, police services boards. So there's all kinds of opportunities to really jump in and make a difference. So in my condo board, we had a racist that was making decisions. And during the pandemic, it came to a head. That was somewhere where I never looked. I never said, oh, I want to be the president of my condo board and volunteer my spare time to put in speed bumps and, deal with noise complaints. But when the racist decided to take away joy from young Black children, I went to the racist and said, hey, what are we doing? Let's, there's people that want this. You don't have the opportunity to make all of these decisions. We looked a little bit deeper. We found the board was dysfunctional. It wasn't an actual board. It was just one person making the decisions. So we took steps to remove them. They took steps to attempt to file a lawsuit against me and accused me of harming them in their workplace. And ultimately we got to an annual general meeting and I ran against the racist and I took control of the condo board. And from there, I was able to make a whole bunch of changes that benefited not just Black community members, but certainly centered Black community members in decision-making and gave them voice. And, little things that are actually big things, like being able to look at all the contracts and when contracts come up or we're changing contractors to ensure that Black-owned businesses are applying for things like landscaping and snow removal. So all of these steps, like being active in my local union, being active in my community, going to the police services board and speaking out about their violence and anti-Black racism, going to the school board and speaking out against, the various policies and practices that they were using, led me sort of to this place where it was a natural progression, right? If I'm just gonna go there and speak out for years and years and years, at some point I wanted to say, look, I wanted to model the example of putting my money where my mouth is, putting some resources into it, and trying to run a serious school board trustee campaign that hopefully will make a difference and hopefully I'll be successful.
That's fabulous. And so with respects to leadership, because you definitely are sharing some leadership skills here, talk to us about the definition of leadership in your opinion.
I learned this from a mentor, and people have all different descriptions of what's a leader. Do they speak well? Do they show up? What, at the end of the day, the definition of a leader is really simple. Do you have followers, right? And what that means is, can you mobilize people around ideas, around strategies? Can you get people behind you? If you think you're leading just because you have, you know, a platform, make sure that you're looking back behind you and you're saying, I'm leading people, I'm uplifting people, and I'm bringing people along. If you're not doing that, in my opinion, you're not leading. And so I always try to stay grounded in the fact that leading really and making change, right? Leadership, transformational leadership requires you to be able to mobilize people around ideas, or you'll never get anything done.
100%, 100%. So talk to us about some of the greatest lessons that you've learned running for office.
I knew you were going to give me that question. So, you know, first of all, I have learned, I'm going to start with the good lessons, because there are some. You know, I've learned a lot about my capacity to focus on the task, and I've learned a lot about our Black community out here in Peel and how supportive, you know, people are, despite the stereotypes of Black people not working together and getting along and supporting and uplifting one another. You know, out here, we have 17 Black candidates in a chat group, some running against each other. And I believe there's a few more. Like, I would say there's probably at least 20 Black candidates in the upcoming municipal election. And everyone is so supportive, working together, sharing resources, donating to one another's campaigns, door knocking together, sharing volunteers, doing all of this wonderful thing. So, you know, I've learned that, you know, we are capable of great things, that people would love to tell us that we're not, and that we can't win, and that we don't have enough numbers, and that, you know, other identity groups will never vote for Black people. That's not what I'm hearing at the door, right? There's, in my wards where I'm running, there should be 35 candidates knocking doors when you go from the top of the ballot, the mayors, to the city, to the regional, and to the 12 trustees that are running. Most doors I go to, they'll say, no one's ever come to my door. No one has ever come, or they'll have one or two, you know, and I tell them, like, there should be 35 people at your door listening to your issues, you know, sharing their ideas of how they want to help you. And that's not what's happening. But I can tell you out here, you know, the Black candidates are working really hard, and everybody's putting in, you know, the best possible campaigns that they can. So that's been a great learning experience for me, just being supported that way, and seeing the entire group of us being supported. I've also learned that politics is a nasty and dirty game. And it's rather unfortunate, right? Because sometimes it doesn't feel like it's a battle of ideas. Sometimes it feels like it's a battle of resources, and, you know, alliances. And you have to navigate some really difficult spaces in order to, you know, to get the results and the support that you want. And there's some people that, you know, I feel operate in very oppressive ways. So that's the tough part, and I think that's the difficult part. But I think all of us that have, you know, put our name in, or have run before, or have held positions, you know, kind of know to expect a little bit of that. But in Brampton, I feel like it's heightened. I feel like it's extremely nasty. And I'll tell you, I was advised, you know, day one of my campaign, I have a friend that created my flyers for distribution, and he's a graphics guy, and he did a really great job. And I told him what I wanted on the front, and I told him what I wanted on the back, and the back was just that bio that you read. And I thought, you know, Dave's going to run a positive campaign. Dave's going to come out here and talk about all of the wonderful things he's done in the community. And two people who are sitting in office today looked at it and said, no, you have to attack the incumbent. And quite frankly, the incumbent was deserving of the attack that I put upon him. But that wasn't, you know, it was day one where I had this like eye-opening experience that, look, this isn't going to be, you know, all niceties and collegiality. This is going to be, you know, a really, you know, aggressive thing. And to take out an incumbent, unfortunately, all of the advice that I was given was that you have to tell people what's wrong with them. And by the way, the incumbent in my ward is a gentleman named Will Davies, who those of you who followed the struggles in Peel might be familiar with Mr. Davies. He's the one that called McCrimmon School McCriminal. And ultimately, and it's a school with a high Black and Brown population. Ultimately, that was one of the catalysts for the minister stepping in and stripping the board of his powers. He refused to apologize. It was a racist joke. He thought it was funny and he didn't see it as problematic. And so, you know, these are the types of people that sit on school boards and get elected and, you know, stay there for 20 years and allow the harm to happen to Black students and Black children. So hopefully we can get him out of there. And I've certainly taken a stronger position. Like instead of my bio on the back of my flyer, I have a picture of him where he looks kind of shady and his name, and then direct quotes from newspaper articles detailing the dysfunction and anti-Black racism. And I sent them out to about 18,000 households in the mail, and they'll be arriving for day after Thanksgiving. So that's what you have to do sometimes. And that was a tough lesson for me, but now here I am.
And you know what? Sophia's in the chat and she's indicating, so community members are not often aware of what's happening and we re-elect blindly. And that is true. Like sometimes we don't know what's happening behind the scenes, right? So it's always good to have this type of information so that we're informed on what's really happening. So talk to us about community members in Peel, if they want to get out there and help to canvass with you, get out signs, help to do whatever it is that you need help with. How do they contribute?
So they can go to my website if that's easier. It's davidbosfield.ca. They can call me directly. I'll put my number in the chat, but I'll just say it here since people are watching on YouTube. It's 416-948-0539, or they can email me at dbanner@gmail.com.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for coming on. I appreciate you for your patience with me a little bit earlier. I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so up next, let's see who we have. Next, Akua Frempong. Okay, Akua has lived in Whitby for over 10 years. During her high school years, she thrived in a DDSB school filled with programming opportunities and experiences. With the support of her teachers and wants all students in the DDSB to have an equitable experience. After obtaining a Bachelor of Science in Nursing and a Master of Management of Applied Science, specializing in global health systems in Africa, Akua returned to Whitby and now works as a healthcare coordinator for a homeless health organization. So let's welcome Akua to the table.
Good evening, everyone.
How are you?
Hi, good. How are you? We're loving the head wraps. So I'd like to introduce myself again. Hi, my name is Akua Frempong, pronouns she, her, and I'm a Durham District School Board trustee candidate for Whitby. And thank you very much for having me on the talk today. It's been absolutely amazing to hear the experiences of everyone across the province. I've kind of just been very consumed in terms of what's been happening in Durham. So it's nice to hear, obviously not the disheartening things, and of course the push as to why we need change, but it's nice to hear what's happening in other regions as well. So thank you very much for organizing this.
And thank you so much for joining as well. Thank you guys all for joining as well. As you mentioned, it is good to hear from various community members across our city. So talk to us and tell us why you decided to run for office.
So I had the privilege of growing up in Whitby to interesting circumstances. So I grew up with my single mother on social assistance here in Whitby, and Whitby is actually quite a quote unquote affluent part of Durham region. We have one of the highest income thresholds in terms of income and economics throughout the region. And growing up in I guess, quote unquote, in social housing, you tend to have a different lived experience and worldview of things. And I find that actually a lot of individuals, whether it be throughout any level of government, simply just don't have that same lived experience. And I think it's important to elect people like many candidates across this call have stated, that actually reflect the communities in which they serve. Currently, of our 11 trustees, majority of them are retirees, whether they are retirees of being teachers or other business-related acumen. And the youngest person on the board is currently in their 50s. Again, nothing wrong with that, but it's actually not reflective of the community that it's currently serving. And as someone who's 20-something, I think it's very important to have younger voices. As someone who graduated from a Durham District School Board high school, went through the process, had that support from my teachers and my counselors, even despite my own social determinants, I think I would bring a unique perspective to the board, also considering as a point of privilege that I also make sure I stayed at the doors as someone who actually does not have children in the board. So I think in terms of when we're talking about our communities and how they're representative of our communities, as someone who kind of went through that post-secondary experience, came back to Whitby, has set roots, now is supporting myself in my own environment, but also bringing forth my lived experience and being able to look at our school board in a different mindset of looking at it as not only just how we serve students in the classroom, but what does that look like holistically? Because a lot of people don't understand that actually a big part of the role of trustee is in terms of policy and governance. So in my priorities / my platform, I actually split it in terms of community outreach and initiatives. So what does building community in terms of understanding our education system look like inside and outside of the classroom? And then what does it also look like from a board standpoint in terms of the policies, procedures, and programming that we as trustees as a whole then organize, discuss, scrutinize, debate to then put forth into the larger school community, which then impacts every single learner. And so I was actually on a webinar yesterday and through the Ontario Public School Board Association. And there was an individual on the panel who said that the trustee role is the only role where your entire job is to advocate for children. And I thought that was interesting that they said that, because my immediate thought was not all our learners are children. By the time you get to high school, we have learners who are adults, and we have them going through a critical transition point where they're going off and into, again, I'm a strong proponent that we also need to ensure that we tie our policies to equity. To tell every student that to be successful, you have to go to post-secondary is an absolute scam. You don't have to do that. You can go into trades, you can go into college. I had the privilege of doing a collaborative program. So I went to college first for a couple of years, and then I finished off in university and graduated with a degree. I'm still someone who has the privilege to support herself while also having thousands of dollars in student debt. These are the type of stories that I want to see. And these are the type of people I want to be running for office. These are real people who can sit down and say, you know what? I went through the system, but it was different for me. Let's make sure that your journey is individualized. And I think that that's really important and something that we need to look more at in our board. Is this unfortunately with our government, this one size fits all approach to education, which we clearly know is not the answer to anything. So it's amazing and I love that sorry, David was talking about how they have a group chat. So a couple of us on the call here in Durham. So I guess to kind of go back to your first question, apologies for the run on. But one reason why I thought about getting into our trustee roles, because we have an amazing trustee named Nikki Lundquist. She's one of the current trustees for Whippy. And Whippy, we have, based on population, we have 3, so 3 will be elected. And she actually sat me down a year ago, and just, it was randomly outside of my apartment building at a Tim Hortons on an August night. We spoke for like 2 hours, and she said, Akua, I see something in you, and this is something that I want you to consider. And so I think when we talk about that leadership piece in terms of getting to the table, but also bringing others up with you, that was it for me. And so I've really had the privilege to have her an unwavering support to go forward. And I think I've always been active in somewhat of a sense, whether it be through my own personal community organizing, whether it was here in Whitby through the Congress of Black Women, or when I was away at university. And I think it was Chris who stated that literally our education system acts as the vessel for knowledge development. And there's no better way to have, not even just, I wouldn't even necessarily say it as a starting point, but just to committing the ultimate act of service for your community to make sure that every single learner who goes through that system gets that opportunity, right? Like we are so fortunate to live in a country, and just as the daughter of immigrants, as someone who's first generation, to be in a position where, understanding it's through a socialized, publicly funded system, which I'm a strong proponent of, as we all imaginally are, that we have the privilege of quote unquote free education. But the ways in which that we engage in that system, the ways in which we understand that system, Avril was talking about this quite a bit, where I think, it might have been Avril, I'm not sure, but in terms of the showing up piece, that always kind of struck a nerve to me, because I don't actually see it as if you're a parent that shows up, that you don't care. There are many reasons why parents don't show up. I was living with a single mother who sometimes worked 2 jobs, was on social assistance, so she couldn't always be there. But I had the privilege of having those teachers who, an hour before this call, I was on the phone with one of them for an hour, one of my grade 10 teachers, and my counselors, and the support of that community that was able to uplift me to a point where I went through a system, even with challenges in my own personal home life. But when I stepped into that school, I thrived, right? And there's no reason as to why every single learner, not child, learner, should step into a system, where it's in Peel, whether it's in Durham, or whether it's in Toronto, where they cannot have that same experience. And I think that's a reason why, especially myself, and I know a lot of people on this call, are running for trustee. So that's been one of the big things for me.
Definitely. I love that. And there's a lot of things that you were saying that I love. But to touch on the point that you just made about the fact that your mom was a single mom and she was not able to always be present in the school, that is a huge fact. To the parents and the guardians that are able to get out there to be on the PTA, get out there, because that visibility is there for not just your children, but for children in the school across the board. And then there are those parents that aren't able to be there, but they are glad for the parents that are there, who can be there at the time. So that's huge. But a holistic approach to, running, and just the ultimate act of service, of course, highlighted in the chat here, is huge. So talk to us about your definition of leadership.
Oh, that's so hard. I feel like there's been so many definitions that come around, and I'm never able to just like put it into words, because I feel like it looks different. It acts different, it presents different depending on the situation that you're in. But I think in just a general sense, like I get it in terms of being able to pull people into your corner and make that change, and have people see the vision and be able to execute it and put it out there in a way that is able to impact the communities in which you serve, and even communities that you don't serve. I think that that's very important. But I think a big part of it, and again, like when I when I was even just looking at in terms of the roles and responsibility of a trustee, the big part I think of being a leader is an advocate, is identifying that there is a problem and working towards a solution, and understanding that to come to that solution, you're going to have to sit with people who don't agree with you. You're going to have to converse with people who don't have the same viewpoints, whether positive or negative. It's about that adaptation. It's about that transition piece. It's about being a collective. So I think like leadership it's an umbrella term for a lot of things. But I think honestly, I think that anyone actually has the potential to be a leader. Like we could argue that there's been terrible people throughout society who are quote unquote leaders, because again, they are able to rally people. They are able to have certain visions, although terrible. But they do so. And even if that change harms a lot of people, a change in somewhat of a sense occurs. And so I think when we're talking about all of us here on this call and people throughout the province who are stepping up, I think just like kind of like Chris said, like putting your name forward, I think in a sense makes you a leader, because you're identifying that although you send something, whether it's something that a lot of people agree with or what they don't, because then they, again, will decide to vote for you based on, your ethics and your policies and such, taking that step to say, you know what, I want to step up and be that voice for my community, makes you a leader. And sometimes somebody said a really good thing, because there's a trustee on council, there's a trustee on our school board who I've had the pleasure of meeting, and he describes himself as not needing to be the loudest person in the room and still being able to enact change. And like he's quiet, he's more reserved, but when he votes, things he votes on and his policies and procedures have been good, and they've enacted good change. So it's not even that like leaders even have to be the loudest. Sometimes the leaders are present who are at the back, who are writing all of the scripts for the people who come forward and spew all of these things that we then take to fruition and believe that they're the be all end all. Sometimes they're the people, there are leaders who are our service workers, our cleaners, the people who weren't seen as, quote unquote, the healthcare heroes, but they were the ones that are making sure that, you as the person who was driving that truck got that coffee at 5 a.m. so you could continue dropping off supplies for everyone else in the neighborhood. They were the grocery store clerks who worked long hours and made sure that we all had food so we could survive during the pandemic. They're people who stepped up and did something for their communities. So I think like the word leader is very multifaceted. And I think that's what I like about it, that to me personally, there isn't really one true definition. It's identifying that there's a problem and working towards a solution.
Super important. And that's why I ask what the, like everybody their own definition of leadership, because I believe that, you're going to tell us what that means to you. And it's different for each and every individual. So thank you for that. Talk to us about voting. How have you found our community to be responsive to heading to the polls?
So historically, based on 2018 data, Whitby had one of the lowest voter turnouts municipally in all of Ontario. I think we were second to last, and last was Oshawa. So not the best. I also looked at our statistics in terms of how many people voted for a trustee versus each of the councillors and city councillors, anticipating that it would actually be larger proportion by population because we've grown significantly since 2018. Stephen was talking a little bit about the urban sprawl that we're having across Durham. For us in particular, we're having a very, very large issue in particular in terms of one particular ward where a new housing development was completed at the start of COVID and is still technically going through completion in terms of residents moving in and such. And as a result, we've had a big impact on 4 holding schools, so to speak, where they're way past capacity. And we're still in talks of like adding more portables upon portables upon portables. So that's a thing. But in terms of the actual voter turnout itself, it's not very good. A lot of people have talked already about how people don't really understand the trustee role, therefore not really understanding why they should vote for one. And then sometimes I get to the doors and they're like, well, I don't have kids in the system. And I say, fun fact, I don't either, but you can still vote for a trustee because again, like fostering that belief and that foundation in our learners is going to have an impact on you in some way, shape, or form when you're 65 in long-term care and that person went through DDSB school, got the foundation of knowledge and went on to do whatever and is now caring for you. There, again, that person who maybe you see at the grocery store, who's your financial advisor again. So again, fostering this, investing in the development of our education system, I think also is tied to voting, because then you're voting for people who then ensure that that system works well for all learners across, not only in Durham, but across Ontario. So I don't know, I think it'll be an interesting time because, for instance, in Whitby, we will have a new mayor in any way, shape, or form, because the current one has now retired. We will have some change within our city councilors. I mean, we have 4. I'm really holding out hope for 2, including one amazing one who is on this call who we'll hear from later. Unfortunately, I can't vote for them because I'm not in my ward, but vote for PG anyways. And of course, Nikki Lundquist, the one who was instrumental in my run, is actually now, I'm already putting it out there into the universe, is actually now going to be my city councilor as of October 24th, because she's running in Center Ward where I live. So we'll have some change, we'll see. Whitby, you can vote for 3 trustees. And at the onset, I mean, there are 2 of the incumbents of the 3 who are still running for re-election. Again, I don't think running as an incumbent necessarily means you'll be re-elected. So I think voting, we'll see. We have advanced polls look different across the region. So for us, we don't have any, like Ajax, we don't have phone or online. It's strictly in person. So we have special polls, and we also have roving polls for people who, for instance, live in long-term care facilities or other healthcare institutions. So those days have already been set. There'll be separate private, those locations will be specific to those residents and will be on various days starting the week of the 17th when advanced polls start. So we actually have 4 days of advanced polls, and then we have election day, and they're all back to back. So the Thursday, the 20th to Sunday, the 23rd will be advanced polls, and then we'll have election day on the 24th. And the good thing about Whitby is that it's actually super accessible to vote in the grand scheme of things, because we have a vote anywhere system, which means you can vote at any polling location across the entire town. Versus for federally and municipally, you have to go by your polling station and a particular poll in order to cast your vote. So it's much easier this time. You literally just go with your voter information card and your ID. You can go anywhere and vote at any time, obviously between 10 to 7 during advance and then 10 to 8 on election day. But I think they've made it a little bit more accessible this year in terms of people just being able to go somewhere and vote, in terms of having to tie it to a particular location. So we're hoping that will help. I mean, I'm already prepared. I'm going to be driving my mom right at 8 o'clock in the morning, so it'll be good. I'll be like, Mom, you're going to be the first person alive to vote for me. You're going to do that, please. If you do anything on election day, do that. So he said, you know what? Forget it. I'm just going to come pick you up. It's good. It's fine. Renting a car and everything. It's going to be great. So that's good. So we'll see, and we're optimistic. If anything, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been so fortunate to have our little Durham Black candidates group chat with some of the people on this call. I'm very thankful for the colleagues I've met and the relationships I've built and the people I've met throughout. So if anything, I know there's going to be some great people elected to the Durham District School Board this election, and we're going to have an opportunity to perhaps make history and elect Black candidates across all the major municipalities. That would be absolutely fantastic. And if not, we'll keep striving. We'll keep working on our communities. We'll keep connecting. We'll keep building those relationships in those communities, and we'll continue to support one another either way. So it's been a great experience, and thank you again.
Yes, no problem. So let everybody know if they need to get in contact with you, how they can reach out.
Wonderful. So you can go to my website, pong.ca. So that's Akua Frempong, my first and last name. And then all my social media links will be there. They are Akua for DDSB trustee. And you can also email me or message me through any of the social media means or directly through the website. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for joining the conversation. I appreciate you. Thank you. All right. Okay, so we're moving on, guys. We're going to be talking to PG Case. Whitby has been his home since 1996 and is now where him and his wife proudly raise their 2 children. Successfully completed his degree in sociology with Trent University, Durham, GTA, where he learned fresh perspectives that benefit diverse social experiences, many of which he's had to implement in his community work. Determined to put theory into practice, he co-founded Durham One, an incorporated non-for-profit organization devoted to amplifying the voice of Durham residents in matters such as economic development, safety, and community engagement. He's also had the opportunity to serve on committees such as Durham Region Anti-Racism Task Force, Durham Region Police Diversity Advisory Committee, Ethno-Cultural and Diversity Advisory Committee in Whitby, and the Durham Regional Immigration Portal. His volunteerism is centered in exploring various ways to serve the community and working together to accomplish the changes that we need and deserve. So I would like to welcome PG Case to speak with us today.
Thank you, Miss Ellie. And
How
good
are
evening,
you?
everybody. I am well, thanks. Yourself?
I am doing very well. Thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure.
So talk to us, tell us why you decided to run for office.
So it was something similar to Sophia. It was never something that I had in my my radar. However, a conversation came up with a regional councillor in Ajax, just talking about whether or not it would be, what was it like for him? And he said, look, this is what I am hearing in Whitby East, that the incumbent might not be running, and I think it'll be a great opportunity for you to do so. But first and foremost, you got to talk to your wife, because I'm not helping you if no one's on board. And outside of that aspect of running, I think for me, it was really coming to the forefront and willing to serve the community at a different level. A lot of the work that myself and Stephen have done, and Roderick, who's actually on this call as well, has always been in the background and always pushing and advocating for community members, but not wanting the accolades or our names tied to things. It's just being able to get the work done. And now coming to the forefront, you're really just putting yourself out there for the community to kind of say, well, are you worthy enough to serve us at this level? But the reason why I put forward is that I know that I have a strong community. I have a strong love for the community and wanted to see the best for the people around me.
Definitely very important. So what does leadership, that word, what does that mean to you? How would you define it?
I think Akoa said it best. It looks different for everybody. For me, though, it's and I think maybe Sophia might have put it in the chat. I'm not sure, but it was it's a servant leader, right? I don't think that is a terminology that is used often when it comes to leadership, and it's knowing how to serve people. I think when you hear servitude, you think of it as being weakness, but one thing I have been able to learn over the years is that a strong leader knows how to serve, and I think that's where we've lost the essence when it comes to our elected officials, right? Instead of serving the community, the better the community, and by bettering the community, you better yourself, right? And for me, being able to understand that aspect of serving, it has really allowed me to better myself. So that's how I look at leadership.
And that's important for us to know, you know, as a leader, to be out there, what that means to you. But what do this, like, as a leader in your community, what do you think our citizens need to know about voting, about your running for office at this time?
I think it's easy to say, well, you know, a lot of the catchphrases like your vote matters and so on and so forth. But I think what is more important is that their vote is an opportunity for them to exercise their power, right? And we don't believe that we have power as individuals. But if we are able to come together and mobilize and realizing that our votes can shift who goes into office and shift ideas, there's a need for voting, right? But and if I have to be transparent, there are times when I didn't vote, and I've had these conversations at the door where people are like, well, why am I going to vote? And I'm like, honestly, I've been in the same boat. Why am I going to vote? Because it's the same promises at all the time, right? So I think one of the reasons why we need to vote is we need to be able to realize that there is power in us voting. But I think in also voting, you want to make sure that you're voting for the right people as well, and which is definitely difficult when platforms are created and everyone's platform is always the same, right? And it's like, well, who do I vote for? They're all the same, so who's going to actually deliver, right? But I think it's important though that we look at who we are as people and ask tough questions at the door before you give your vote, because again, you're giving away your power once you decide to vote for that individual.
So tell us, when we go to the polls, why are we voting for you?
Well, one thing I've looked at is I think we've been like, this has been an experience for myself, but you get a slew of information coming at you at once, and it's what's your platform, what are you gonna do in the first 100 days, and you go through and you look at everyone else's and it's, well, I'm gonna attack speeding, I'm gonna attack community safety, I'm gonna attack housing. But for myself, I wanted to ensure that I had a grassroots approach to the work that I want to do. And for me, what I did was I said that within the first 100 days of office, I want to create a council to ensure that any decision that's made by me, anything that I'm fighting for, it's going to be influenced and guided by the community. So that is one of the first things that I speak to people about when I'm at the doors, that I'm not just here to make empty promises. I'm not just here to create a platform that does not take into consideration your needs, your desires, your wants, but it's actually coming together and realizing that the platform I create and the things that I'm going to be doing is going to be influenced by you.
Very important to know. So how could the community get involved? If there are some community members that wanted to help out, you know, canvass with you, put out signs, or just figure out how they can help, how do they reach out?
So my website is pgcase.ca, and my social media handles are pgcase4 for you. And we'll also be doing some canvas days as well over the weekend. So any help will be great. As I say back home, every meko meko moko. So I'm good for that.
And talk to us about some of the greatest lessons you've learned, maybe about yourself, about your community, when it came to running for office.
Wow, it's staying true to who you are. I have had conversations with individuals, and there's the conversation where, you know what, we're gonna play good politics, we're not gonna go after the next person. And then a week or so from there, you hear conversations being had about you and lies and so on. But at the end of the day, my main goal for this is to ensure that I stay true to who I am. On the front of one of my pamphlets, I say serving with integrity, right? And it's being able to be in an arena where people tend to change because of their surroundings. But for me, I have always been able to call upon the people that keep me grounded, right? And I think that's one of the main things that I've learned and continue to learn is being vulnerable, right? Because sometimes again, vulnerability seems to be a word where we think it's weakness, but in this time, you really need a strong core of people around you who are going to continue to motivate you and to help you through this process. So, yeah, those are some of the things that I've learned is just continue to maintain who you are. Don't sacrifice that for anyone else, and just being vulnerable in this process, and just know that if you've created a strong foundation from the get, you know that you can lean on your family, your friends to really continue to help you through this process.
Definitely. And so I want to just appreciate you for coming through. Thank you so much for the chats. We definitely appreciate you. Let us know where we can reach out if we need to get in touch.
So it's pgcase.ca. That's my website. And then for my social media handles, it's pgcase4, and then the word YOU. So pgcase4u. Thank you, Miss Ellie.
Thank you so much. Thanks again. All right. I do see a couple of individuals in the chat. If anybody has any questions, I would love for you guys to pop those questions in the chat. I know right now it's 8:48, so our town hall meeting is due to come to a close at 9 o'clock. Mr. Jamal Myers, city councilor candidate, is in the chat as well. So I just want to give him the opportunity to introduce himself and share a little bit about himself.
Oh, hi, Miss Ellie. Hi, everyone. Thanks for letting me be a last-minute addition to the conversation. So a little bit about me. Born and raised in Scarborough. I'm a lawyer at TD Bank, and I help oversee the bank's climate change policies and policies on human rights and diversity and inclusion. I'm running in Toronto for City Council for Scarborough North, which is a very unique community. It is Toronto's most diverse ward. About 92% of residents are racialized. The racial breakdown is about 40% Chinese, 40% South Asian, 10% Black, 10% white. It's been a very, very interesting race because we've been running on a very pragmatic platform of like actually solving problems. And we've been running against an incumbent who's very disengaged. Our incumbent has the worst attendance record on anyone in city council, has missed 1 out of 4 votes, has the lowest number of motions passed, and has not done anything of any significance since being elected as city council. Unfortunately for us, we also have the lowest voter turnout in the city. Only 27% of people voted in the last election. And our current incumbent won with 5,900 votes out of a possible 64,000. So about 27,000 people elected a city councilor, or 27%. So it's been very interesting. I'm the only candidate that's actually been going door to door, knocking on doors, engaging people. Right up until now, people say you're the first candidate that's come to the door. And, it's just very inspiring seeing, people saying, I wasn't going to vote, but now that I met you, I'm going to go vote. And this is across races, across ages. And it was funny when I started the campaign, I'm 39, I thought my age would be a disadvantage. But people were like, we want to see younger people. We want to see people with new ideas, different lived experiences. I see Chris, stepping up to the plate and, leading the city. So it's just been a great experience. Taking on an incumbent in Toronto is very difficult. Not just because, the natural advantages of being an incumbent, but just because there are certain structural advantages that come with being an incumbent. For example, when they're registered candidates, they can do a mailer, which costs about, let's say, $12,000. And if I wanted to do something similar to that, I'd have to raise $12,000, and that would count towards my limit. So there's all these structural advantages for an incumbent, but just seeing how people have been coming to our campaign office was full today, which is like such an inspiring sight. And it was like, it was noisy, which is always a good thing when you're 18 days away from voting day. It's so inspiring, and it's just such a great feeling knowing that you can make a difference in your community. I'm not running on anything radical, but it's just really making a difference. And I'll just give this one small story. I was doing a building, I knocked on a door, didn't answer. I left a flyer. About 2 days later, that person came into the office. My office is located right at Malvern Mall. She was doing some shopping and she saw my office. She came in and she said that her building had given her a notice that she had to leave the apartment because it had been turned into a condo and someone else had bought it. And they were calling her at all hours of the night. They were harassing her. They were saying that she had to leave. She basically had her stuff packed up in boxes. She was ready to leave at any minute. And she came in and she was like, is there anything you can do? Can you help me? I've lived here for 23 years. I can't afford to live anywhere else. And, it didn't take anything from me beyond thinking, who do I know who's in housing advocacy? Because I know this doesn't sound right. I made a few calls, called a friend, and the friend said, yeah, this is 100% illegal. She does not have to go anywhere. Here are all the rules that they didn't follow. And then I just connected them. And, maybe a day later, she calls me and she says, thank you so much. If it wasn't for you, I might have lost my home. And it's just those small things that you can make a difference, even though I'm not elected to anything. It's just getting out there, making sure people know who you are in the community, and making sure that however the campaign turns out, you're leaving a positive difference. And David's right, politics is nasty. It can be very nasty. It can get very personal. And you have to be tough. You don't shy away from it. You have to lean into it, and you have to be tough, and you have to know how to take a punch and give a punch right back. But what you shouldn't do is ever let it change your core being. You can be tough, but still be who you are when you started the race and when you finished the race. And I think that's just something we all should really hold on to, because everyone who stepped up here, you got in this, just listening to your stories, you got into this for the right reasons. You wanted to make a difference. But don't let the system change who you are at your core, because then you would be losing sort of what you bring unique to the table.
Definitely love that. I love that so much. Let everybody know how to get in contact with you if they needed to reach out for anything or just to connect.
So jamalmyers.com goes to my website. That's just my name. Or you can go Jamal4, so the number 4, Scarb, SCRBOTO.com. And that's for my my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Awesome. So a couple of the questions, most of the questions that were emailed to me were pretty much questions that I had asked. Why do you want to become, a candidate? Why are you running? What makes you a leader? Why should we vote for you? And these are all questions that I wanted to make sure that we ask so that our community members will know why they feel that they should get out there and why they feel like they should vote. And it's extremely, extremely important. A lot of the conversation tonight was about the power of connection, the power of making a difference, stepping into who you know you can be as leaders in our community. And I just want to thank you guys for coming out, sharing your information with all of us, letting us know why we need, as residents, as community members, as parents, guardians, just members of our community, why we need to go out, why our vote matters. and who you are as individuals, because it's really important for us to find out who the person is behind that billboard. It's really nice to see your name out there on my lawn, you know, and you may come to my door to say a couple of kind words to me, and I love that. But it's always good for our community to get to know who is actually running for office, asking the tough questions that sometimes we're not able to ask, but you guys are able to answer. So I just want to appreciate you guys for coming through. This is my very first town hall meeting. It came off to a little bit of a rough start. I was supposed to have a moderator come and help me. And I want to just thank my 12-year-old daughter for helping me moderate today. So give it up to Isabel, everybody. She was helping me in the chat. And then my 10-year-old daughter, Ruby, as well. They're double timing on their laptops here with me. We're trying to figure things out. So I just want to thank you guys. I appreciate you guys. As a parent who is highly involved in my children's school, I'm in there, pizza lunches, PTA meetings, you know, trying to be as active as I can as possible. I do like to hear across the board what the different trustees are, what you guys are facing, different issues in different communities, and to see how we can possibly collaborate, connect, and try to see if maybe if something works for you over there in Durham or in Peel, it may work for us in here in Toronto, and vice versa. Please drop all of your contacts in the chat as well, so that everybody's able to connect with everybody else. And that's pretty much it. I just want to thank you guys all for joining. And yeah, I appreciate every single one of you guys. I am not sure how to unmute everybody. I'm going to try to do this right now. So I think you are able to unmute.
I think so.
Yep.
So thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. It was a pleasure.
Good luck, everyone.
Yes.
Everyone, good job.
Thank you. Good luck to
Go,
everybody.
go knock some
Yeah.
doors. You have a couple more minutes.
No.
No.
There's
No.
there's no replacement for knocking at the doors. There's never a replacement for knocking at the doors, ever.
Yeah, but there's a safety component, so we're not doing that.
Yes.
You guys are awesome.
Thanks so much,
All right.
Ellie.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thanks, Ellie.
You've been
Have a
amazing.
good night, everybody.
Thanks, Ellie. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Night.
It was a great meeting, everybody.
Jamal, we'll connect.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, you're in my area, so Malvin is home. So
Awesome. Awesome.
When I saw you grew up Seven Oaks, that's where I lived on the other side of the 401. I just Googled you.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay. I'm still there.
Okay. Yeah, I lived off of Military Trail. My siblings are still there, but I left and moved to Ajax.
Okay. Awesome. My dad lives in Pickering.
Okay.
Yeah.
really, does he
There
want
you
a
go,
lawn sign?
Linton.
Well, now I know who to tell him to vote for.
Ask him if he wants a lawn sign.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
All right,
Bye, everyone.
later.
All right, good night, everybody. Take care.
Bye, guys. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to work two computers. Everything's going crazy, but I made it. We made it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope you feel better, okay? Take care. I appreciate you. Bye. All right, guys. And it's a wrap for our first town hall meeting. I know it didn't run totally smooth, but honestly, thank goodness for all of our participants. Thank goodness for my two daughters who helped me out today as my moderators. I've got to figure some good, I can't just pay them, you know, I've got to give them like Roblox cards. You guys hit me up, let me know what I should do. But I just want to thank everybody. I respect all of these candidates that are running out for office. This was a fabulous, fabulous interaction and connection. I can't wait till our town hall meeting 2.0 because this is 1.0. And we'll see where